The Papyrus Brooklyn it's a fascinating document from ancient Egypt. Would you explain that for us? What does it say and why is it significant for the biblical narrative?
This is probably our primary evidence for really being able to say archaeologically that Hebrews specifically lived in Egypt prior to the Exodus. Because what we just talked about with Ramses and Pithom, all we can say from an archaeological perspective is that they were Semites, right? But we can't say that they were Hebrews. But this papyrus, so on part of it, there's a list of household slaves in Egypt. 95 of the names have been preserved. It's not in perfect condition. And they follow this convention like we see in the Joseph narrative where these foreigners, they become servants and they get a new Egyptian name. So that same practice like Joseph had. About 45 of the names are what we could call Asiatic. But within that group, there are several that are specifically Hebrew names that we find in the Bible, biblical Hebrew names. Most of them are female names, and so some are actually feminine versions of male names we're familiar with. One of the clearest examples, I think, is Shiphrah. That's the name of one of the Hebrew midwives in Exodus chapter 2. I'm not saying it's the same person, but it's the same name and from just probably about the next century or so. So this papyrus dates to around the 17th century BC. So we're in the pre-Exodus period. So we've got somebody named Shiphrah. We've got Menahema, okay, feminine version of Menahem. We've got a feminine version of Issachar and Asher. We've got a David name in there. We even have a name that appears just to be Hebrew, the Egyptian rendering of Hebrew. So I don't know, was he named Hebrew or they just called him Hebrew because they didn't know his name? Not really sure. But those names, I would say, that's our best evidence for saying, yeah, Hebrews lived in Egypt during the pre-Exodus period. Because how else can you define that, or how else can you have evidence for that? You can't just say they're Hebrews purely based on their material culture, like their pottery or something. I mean, when we get into Canaan during the time of the Israelite settlement, yeah, we can distinguish between Israelite villages and Canaanite villages because the Mosaic law is in effect. They have the Israelite four-room house and these other things. But prior to that, no, we really need to see what their names are, or we'd have to see like these are the sons of Jacob or something like that. And that's basically what we've got there: Hebrews and Hebrew names.